Hello. Hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope that you are well. I am Karissa Span. I'm so excited that you are joining me today. Listen, it is a marvelous Monday, and today we are talking about myths, the 5 myths of tenant screening. I promise that this segment today is going to be helpful information, and my only goal is to make sure that the information that I share is clear and is understandable for landlords as well as tenants. This is what I do each and every Monday. I know that we skipped a week because of the holiday, and I've missed you all so much. Please let me know where you are tuned in from. Show me some love in the chat box. Say, hey, girl, hey. Let me know where you're tuned in from. I know I have viewers who are watching live on Facebook. Some are on Instagram. Some are on LinkedIn and YouTube. So please let me know where you're tuned in from. Let me know if this is your first time here. And if you are watching the replay, let me say thank you so much. I'm going to share some tips today. All right. So I'm talking about the 5 myths of tenant screening. I know that as we are coming upon the spring season, that a lot of tenants, a lot of people are going to be moving. And that means that landlords should be conducting screening for their rental property. So I hope to share some information today that is helpful. If you don't find that it's useful today, I promise put in your backpack, your suitcase. You may need it later down the road, or share it with someone who may need this information. Is that all right? So let me go to my comment section here. Let me acknowledge some people. Hello, Martha. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to share some information. You're tuned in from Washington, D.C. Awesome. Hey, Kevin. Good evening. How are you, man of God? Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, listen, guys, I'm going to get right into it. Hey, Dee, thank you for tuning in, sis. So I'm talking about the 5 myths of tenant screening. And here's what I want people to know, especially landlords who are maybe self-managing your property, or maybe you are managing someone else's property. In any event, anybody who is in a rental community, if you have rental property, you're trying to lease up, you're trying to find a tenant, you should definitely be screening all prospective tenants. Let me just reiterate that. You should be screening as a landlord, as a housing provider, as a housing professional. You should be screening all prospective tenants. I share this. Hey, V, thank you so much for tuning in, sir. Good evening to you. Hello, Rahima. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see that my students are chiming in. They're checking in. I love the love. Do appreciate that. But here's why I say that you should be screening all prospective tenants. Over the years, I have come across colleagues, friends, and former clients of mine who, for whatever reason, and it's really their business if they want to or not, but I've come across people who decided they would rent their property out and not go through a screening process, meaning that they didn't screen the applicant, they did not require them to do a background check. And so essentially, they did not have enough information on their prospective tenant. Now, sometimes that could be a good thing, but I've seen that sometimes it could be a terribly bad thing, right? And so I don't like to see anybody go down a rabbit hole. And sometimes with landlords or property managers, they are not conducting these screenings. They're not conducting background checks. Sometimes they don't really know who they're going to get into their rental property. Now, here's what I do know about rental property. Okay. For those of you who've been watching me, you already know that I've been in the industry for almost 3 decades. Okay. I've been in the industry for almost 30 years in property management in some sort of capacity. All right. People usually fare much better when they are screened. Tenants do respect landlords who rule with the iron fist. Okay. And so that's why I'm sharing my topic for the discussion today. All right. And if you had an opportunity to check it out, I'm sharing today the 5 myths of tenant screening. All right. The 5 myths of tenant screening. All right. So the first tip that I do want to share today here is a common myth. And that's this. Sometimes people think that you can judge a book by its cover. How many people believe that you can judge a book by its cover? All right. So that's the first myth. All right. Let me just put that up on the screen. You can judge a book by its cover. That's a myth. Here's why. Because sometimes if your background process is not clear, that could usually open landlords up for some sort of fair housing complaint for discrimination. Here's what I want landlords to understand. Make sure that you have an application process that is the same for all tenants across the board. It doesn't matter if the tenant is rich or poor in a housing program, is a market tenant, is black or white, is fat or skinny, is educated, or maybe barely passed their GED exam. Please have the same criteria for all applicants. Don't just look at a person and say, oh, they're not going to be a good fit, or I don't like how they look, right? I've had colleagues over the years who said, well, Karissa, I don't have a problem renting to African Americans. I just have a problem renting to the really dark fellas who have dreads. That's still a form of discrimination. All right. So please make sure that you understand fair housing laws. All right. Here's the second tip. I want people to know, here's the second myth, rather. Landlords must accept tenant provided credit reports. What does that mean? Meaning that a tenant comes to you wanting to rent your property. They have a credit report in their hand. Landlords are not required to accept that. That is a myth. Now, landlords may, but it's not a requirement that they must accept a credit report. If your application process, it's streamlined how you conduct the background check and that you use a particular service, then you can definitely use that service. You do not have to accept a credit report that a tenant has provided in hand. All right. So let me just put that out there. Let me go to my comment section. All right. So I see your comments coming in. Hey, Moose, thank you for tuning in. So you're answering the question, my first myth. All right. Hey, Jackie, thank you for tuning in. Use your company and require police clearance and make sure that utility payments are up to date. That is a good point. Thank you so much for that, Jackie. Jackie, I should have you as a co-host today. I should really have you as a co-host. So we are talking about the 5 myths of screening tenants. All right. The third thing is, here's another myth. A paying tenant is all that matters. How many believe that's true? Show me some love in the chat box in the comment section. How many believe that a paying tenant is all that matters? Yes or no? Is that a true statement? Yes or no? All right. And while you're doing that, Jackie, I see your comment. You said the cheapest screening application fee is $50. Well, Jackie, that's a good point. $50 is the fee. But now here's the thing, Jackie. It just depends on what service provider you're using, because some are actually cheaper than $50. I've seen application checks maybe costing as low as $9.99. So it really just depends. And all that matters is that a landlord is using a service. So some fees are small and some are large. I've seen some application fees range well over $200 for an application fee. I'm not sure what service they're using, but in any event, the fees will vary. All right. Hello, Ms. Mason. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. You said no. Katrina, you said no. Jackie, you said no. Rahima, you said no. All right. And I'm asking, a paying tenant is all that matters. Thank you so much for tuning in, Christina. No, that's not all that matters. All right. Do not pay good and damage everything. That costs more to fix. Absolutely, Moose, you get it. You understand. Martha, you said no, because they could be a bad neighbor or messing up a house and you're still paying. Absolutely. Jackie, you said you could get sued by a paying tenant. That's true. That's another topic for a different day. Absolutely. Raquel, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. You said no. Christina, a paying tenant is a good tenant, but how will they maintain their property also matters. Absolutely. So this is a myth. A paying tenant is all that matters. That's not true. That is a myth. Now, yes, landlords do, and they should have paying tenants. They should conduct a background check that will verify that the tenant can afford to pay the rent, unless, of course, they are participating in some sort of housing subsidy program. But just because a person is paying the rent, and of course, you do want the tenant to pay, there are more things that are important other than the tenant paying the rent. You want to make sure that they're professional. You want to make sure that they are able to abide by the terms of the rental lease agreement, right? You want to make sure that all of these things are in place because, again, there is so many more variables and factors other than a tenant paying the rent. You want to make sure that they are reliable. You want to make sure that they're generally friendly. You don't want a tenant in there that's paying rent, but they are raising hell and they're creating a problem for not just the other tenants in the building, or if it's a house, for the other neighbors in the community. So it's so important to understand that a paying tenant is not all that matters. That is a myth. Here's the fourth myth I want to share with you tonight. 4 out of 5. Here we go. Tenants with high scores are great tenants. Is that a true or false statement? Let me see your comments in the chat box. Tenants with high credit scores are great tenants. What'd you say? Let me see your responses. All right, so I see more of my students are tuning in. Thank you so much. All right, so tenants with high credit scores are great tenants. Now, that could be a little tricky. That could be 50-50 here and there. You could have 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. All right, but let me see what you have to say. All right, Christina, you said no, not always. Anybody else? We're talking about credit score. A tenant with a great credit score would make a good credit score would make a great tenant. Anybody else? All right. So I see your comments are coming in. Moose, you said false. All right. Absolutely false. Now, like I said, that could be 50-50. Usually a good credit score, it denotes that maybe the tenant is great paying their bills on time. But just because a tenant has paid their bills on time doesn't mean, that they have avoided late fees if they've ever paid their rent late, right? Okay, I see your comment, Martha. You said that's false, I guess, but they want all this to be great, but it's all about the individual. Absolutely. I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. All right, Moose, you said they can still jack the place up and pay slow. Absolutely. So just because a tenant have a great credit score doesn't mean that they're going to be a great tenant or a high credit score. Doesn't mean that they're not going to cause hell at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Doesn't mean that they won't have fights and parties all day, all night, all weekend, all month, all year long, right? So that is a myth. I want people to understand, right? So here is another myth. Small pets won't be a problem. I know that some landlords, especially those who are in tenant friendly cities and jurisdictions, for instance, Washington, D.C. is tenant friendly. So the laws are strongly in favor of tenants more so than the landlords. And I've got a lot of people who reached out to me. They said, well, Karissa, I have a really great home, completely renovated, whether it's a single family home, whether it's an apartment building, a condo. Owners have put a lot of money into the property and they're concerned about pets, right? And in some cases, they say, well, Karissa, I absolutely do not want pets. I don't care what it looked like. I don't care if it's 2 legs, 4 legs, if it slithers across the floor, absolutely no pets. All right. So we know that some tenants, they do need emotional support animals and or maybe they need a service animal. Different day, different topic. I'll get into what that is at another time. But listen, I know that some landlords and owners don't want pets. Now, if you get a tenant and they have a reasonable accommodation request, meaning that they have something from their physician, their doctor, someone who said they have to have a service animal or emotional support animal, that's a little different, right? But in cases where pets are allowed, doesn't matter if it's a small pet or a large pet. right? There will be damage, right? So sometimes animals can use the bathroom on the floor, um, hardwood floors. If for instance there are pets that are not taken outside frequently, and they don't have anywhere to use the bathroom other than inside the rental property, over a period of time, um, it could stain the carpet, it could get into the hardwood floors, and sometimes that odor is really, really hard to get out. So I don't want people to think that just because there's a small pet that it won't create damage. Listen, if you have a small dog or a large dog, let's agree that all dogs have they have to use the bathroom, right? They have um, fingernails or claws, whatever. I don't have a dog, as you can tell, so I don't know what it's called, right? Which can do damage. Maybe there's a cat, right? That's scratching. So it doesn't matter if it's a small or a large pet. They can usually do some type of damage when they're not managed properly. And so today, I just wanted to share those 5 myths. Come back next Monday. I'll share some more. I'll have my special guest with me, Mr. Keith Childs. It's my partner. He couldn't make it today. But let me just go back to the comment section. Martha, you said pets are not for me. Allergies are really bad for my kids. Um, Christina, you said using the pandemic as an example, a lot of folks lost jobs at no fault of their own. They're not able to manage and fell behind. But prior to the pandemic, their score was okay. But due to the lack of payment, scores do go down. Listen, I like that. I strongly encourage owners and landlords, housing professionals, um, to look at not just a credit score, but look at the history of the tenant. If they have rented most of their life, they have a good history, and things happen. Sometimes people will lose a job and they may have a temporary decline. Maybe consider that versus someone who has a long standing history of never paying their bills. They've been evicted, they've been put out, they haven't been able to pay bills as pertains to their rental history. That's more important than maybe a cell phone bill not being paid, or medical bills, or student loans being unpaid, right? And so, Christina, thank you so much to that point. I do agree. Martha, you said pets are not for everyone. That is so true. Moose, you fully agree. Listen, here's what I know about when it comes to screening applicants. Sometimes landlords, they miss the mark because they don't understand it. Maybe there is a misconception that um, just because a tenant has a great high credit score that they're going to be a good tenant, or maybe because they look a particular way that they're going to be a good tenant. All lies, 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 and fairy tales, right? There are some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, please make sure that you have a screening criteria in place. Even I see some landlords here, and I've been talking with you all, so I know that you're currently self-managing your property. I've had conversations recently with people who are asking about property management. If you are looking to hire a property management company, make sure that you are hiring people who understand your rental property and what your needs are. All property management companies do not provide a cookie cutter solution. As a matter of fact, there is no cookie cutter solution. What does that mean, Karissa? I'm glad you asked. There is not one solution that works well for everybody, right? And so you have some people who are more experienced with properties who may be in some sort of subsidy assisted program. It could be Section 8 or veterans or VASH or pathways, right? There are so many housing programs on the market today. The list goes on and on and on, and it just depends on where that rental property is located. Do some research, understand what works best for you. And when you are looking for tenants, if you are self-managing your own property, find out, first of all, what population of tenants you're looking for without discriminating. Let me just say that, right? So maybe you're looking to rent to someone in a subsidized housing program. Understand the importance of advertising and knowing where to advertise at. But do not discriminate, because discrimination would definitely get you into a world of trouble. So today I've shared 5 myths. Next week, I'll do part 2 of myths. please come back at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on Facebook, on YouTube, and LinkedIn. I know earlier I said Instagram. I'm not live on Instagram yet. Give me a minute. My team, they're trying to get us there as well. So I do hope that something I've shared today was helpful for you. If you have questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you, Sherry, for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions, please feel free to email me. Let me put my email address up on the screen so that you can have it. And again, today I shared 5 myths of screening. I'm going to share them briefly again. For those of you who are just tuning in, the first myth is you can judge a book by its cover. That's absolutely false. The second myth is landlords must accept tenant provided credit reports. That's absolutely false. Landlords do not have to accept those credit reports. They can pull their own if that's their policy. The third myth I've shared today is a paying tenant is all that matters. Absolutely false. They could pay their rent but be a tenant from hell. That is so true, but this is a myth. A paying tenant is all that matters. Here's the fourth myth. Tenants with high credit scores are great tenants. That is a myth. It could be true, but it's not always true. All right. And the fifth and final myth that I've shared today is that small pets won't be a problem. That could also be false. All right. So I hope again that something that I shared was helpful. If you have questions, if you have subject matters you would like for me to share pertaining to landlord and tenant information that will positively impact the rental community, please email me. That's my email address, karissaspan@gmail.com. This is what I do each and every Monday right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It costs you absolutely nothing to show up. It costs you absolutely nothing to get this information but your time. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Again, I'm Karissa Span, the landlord and tenant coach. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I do appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday right here, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now.